Okay, let's draw. So today I want to show you how I do my shading. As you can see here, those are the layers I have at the moment. The first one, the one at the bottom, is the sketch layer. Then the next one is the base color, which is the whole silhouette of the drawing with one solid color. I mostly use the skin color. Then on top I will clip all the other layers. The next one would be the base color for the outfit, and then I have a separate layer for the hair. The two layers on top are the outline layers. First of all, I'm going to put everything into a folder, so it will be easier for later to add the highlight layers and for doing the background. So now I make a new layer on top of the color layer and set it to multiply. I use the dip pen heart, and I use the magic wand to just select the hair, so it will be easier to do the shadows. Once selected everything, I start by putting the shadows wherever I think they fit the best. Putting more shadows behind the back or wherever I think less light would hit. For the hair, I follow the flow of the hair and make thicker and thinner shadows. On this first shadow layer, I mostly do bigger shadow areas, but also some thinner lines for diversity. Once that is done, I create a new layer, put it to multiply as well, and work on the second shadow layer. I most of the time always use the same colors for shadows. But then later in the art process I will change the colors for each section. But first, now on the second shadow layer, I'll choose a darker color. I mostly do the same things now, but the shadow areas will be smaller now. I also make thinner strokes on the hair. Once that is done, I use the smudge tool, and mostly on the second shadow layer, I will smudge some of the lines to blend them in better. Especially when there are lines close to each other, I will blend them together. I mostly just do that on the second shadow layer, but sometimes also on the first one. Now I invert the selection, go back to the first shadow layer, and work on all the other shadows. And it's basically the same. On the first shadow layer, I make bigger shadow areas. And on the second is where I work more on the details. And again, I will use the smudge tool on the second shadow layer to blend out some of the lines. Here you can see how I shade the eyes. First I place a shadow on the top part of the eye, then the pupil, and then a shadow around the iris to give it a little bit of volume. By the way, I use a much darker color for the eye shading. Then I make another semicircle-like shape inside the eye. Now for the skin coloring, I use a much lighter, almost peachy-like color. Also, I have been mostly using the Dip Hard pen, but for the skin coloring I use the pen Fade. With the same pen and on the same layer, I now choose a darker color and add some more darker shadows. After that, I create a new layer, also multiply, for the blush, which I apply on the cheeks, lips, sometimes on the shoulder, knees, etc. Now for one of my favorite parts is to color the outlines. As you can see here, I have two outline layers, the two on top, the multiply and the normal one. The multiply one is just the multiplied outlines, and then I blurred them a little bit. So now I hide the normal outline layer and add layer from canvas, which will make a copy of everything what is right now on the canvas. I clip this new layer to the outlines, blur them as well at around 20 pixels, and go to adjust color, lower the lightness to around -60 and the saturation at +60. But you can play around with it and see what looks the best for your drawing. So now, as I said before, I will change the colors of the shadow layer. First I hide the second shadow layer, the darker one, so I just can see the first layer. I set the first shadow layer to alpha lock, so I will just color in the lines that are already on the layer. Here I either choose a color that will fit good with the base color, or I choose something like blue, purple, pink to give it a little bit of contrast. Here, as you can see, I chose a pale bluish color, and I go over some parts of the shadow. Now I have a pinkish color and do the same thing. Here's also where I lighten up some of the shadows which I think are too dark, like on the skulls of the dress. just playing around with different colors and see what I like the most. When I'm done with that, I will start working on the highlights. Well, some of the white highlights. I create a new layer on top of everything, and I start adding highlights to the eye, so they finally look more alive. I like to outline the lashes with white so they are more visible. I also add more white highlights on everything. What is more shiny, like the metal part on the necklace and the hair clip. And I always zoom in and out to see how it looks from further away, to make sure it is visible. I also add white dots on the cheeks, nose, shoulders, lips, and later I will add more to clothes and hair. Now I make a new layer and add some hair strands. Sometimes I think they look pretty cute. Other times I don't like it at all how they turn out, and that they're just adding visual noise to the image. But I always draw them anyways. Lately I'm adding these shadows to the hair to simulate like a highlight, which is like drawing two semicircles, leaving a space between them, and then blending out the top and lower part. To blend in the hair better with the skin, I select the hair again, create a new layer and set it on add, and add and highlight to the hair which is closest to the skin. I always use a color which is like similar to the hair color, to the skin color, and which I think would look good, but it never works out. So I later go to adjust color and change it so it's more like the skin color. The annoying part is that you also have to go to the strands layer and select just those, so you can add also the highlight to the strands. Here I make a new shadow layer, so I make a new layer and set it to multiply, and I put it outside of the folder that I created so I can clip it on top of everything, so it won't go outside of the drawing. I use a textured brush, I think it's the watercolor brush, and just add a little more shading to give it a bit more volume. I also darken some of the other shadows. Like here on the eye. Now I again create a new layer, set it to overlay. Also clip it to the folder with the rest of the drawing. And add some colors to the things that are in the back, like some parts of the hair and most of the outer edges. I mostly use like a purple, blue or pink color for this. Though now often I set this layer on hard light because it's more opaque. But I still make overlay layers to change colors of some part, or like I did here in the eye, where I made it more saturated. Okay, now that that's done, I make another layer and set it to add again. Now we'll add some more highlights to the drawing. I start with the eye, where I add a highlight on the lower part. I also go back to the overlay layer and lighten the skulls with a light beige, and I also lighten the crown and the cross with the blue color. Now I also make a new layer and add more sparkles and white highlights, especially there where the purple from the overlayer color is. Now I'm mostly done, but I still work on some details. Like here I'm darkening some lines to make the dress more detailed. And at this point I sometimes just keep adding or removing highlights and shadows. When I'm happy with everything, I can make a add layer from. So I have a layer with everything combined, and I can use the special tool or liquefying tool to move parts around which I maybe don't like, or like make the head smaller and stuff like that. I make a duplicate of this layer, set it to lighten, go to adjust color, and set the saturation at 100%. I also play around with the hue and see if something looks better with a slightly different color. When there's a color that is like black or something I want to look darker, I will erase that part on this layer, so it stays dark and less saturated. I lower the opacity at around 40%, and also blur the layer a tiny bit, like 20 pixels. And that is my shading process. I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please leave a like and let me know what you want me to do next. So thank you very much and goodbye.